Hi, my name's Tim Connal. I'm an in-house lawyer in the banking sector and I've previously worked in legal and financial services regulation. And I also sit on the Law Society's Professional Standards and Ethics Committee. Today I'm going to talk to you about some points you'll need to look out for when giving legal advice, including professionalism, the Solicitor's Code of Conduct, the Pro Bono Protocol, and I'm also going to touch a bit on the subject of ethics. These are all subjects that form an integral part of a lawyer's day-to-day work. And whilst some of you won't be fully qualified lawyers just yet, it's still really important to focus on these issues because at any point when you're advising a member of the public on legal issues, whether it be through a law clinic or a regulated law firm, you're essentially acting as a representative for the legal profession. So it's really important that you're able to maintain the trust the public places in the legal profession in all your interactions. So starting off with the subject of professionalism, I think it's important to highlight that to be a successful lawyer, you need more than just excellent legal knowledge. You also have to develop the soft skills that are needed for your work on a day-to-day basis to come across to your clients and your colleagues in a professional manner. So I'm going to talk you through a few points that you might want to bear in mind when trying to maintain an air of professionalism. Firstly, think about your demeanour. Ideally, you should be looking to be polite, reflect confidence, treat those who you're dealing with respect, and try not to be patronising or talk down to people who've got less legal knowledge than you. I also think appearance is important. And whilst I don't necessarily think you have to wear a suit or other ultra conservative clothes all the time, as a professional, you should try to be neat in appearance and present yourself in a way that you would expect from other professionals. You should try to ensure that you're reliable, so try to be punctual, where necessary, respond to people promptly and follow through on promises that you make in a timely manner. And this is about meeting expectations, try not to overpromise, and making sure that you're always on the same page as your client to try and eliminate any potentially nasty surprises. I think it's important to demonstrate good organisational skills. So as a professional, you should be able to quickly and easily find what you need during client interactions. And you should also try to ensure that you adequately prepare in advance of all meetings and advice sessions. And finally, on professionalism, I think it's important to bear in mind the need to maintain competence. As a professional, you should always strive to become an expert in your field and maintain an appropriate level of knowledge. But you should also feel comfortable admitting when there are gaps in your knowledge and be able to approach colleagues or superiors to ask for support when it's needed. It's definitely much better to admit that you don't know the answer than to risk giving a client inaccurate advice. So I'm now going to move on to talk about the Solicitor's Code of Conduct. So this is the code of conduct that's governed by the Solicitors Regulation Authority, which is the organisation responsible for regulating solicitors. The code of conduct is a body of rules that sets out standards of professionalism that both the SRA and the public expect of people who are authorised to provide legal services. So the rules apply to conduct and behaviour, and they're essentially a framework for ethical and competent practice, and they can apply irrespective of the role a legal professional holds or the environment or organisation that they work within. Normally, the code of conduct wouldn't apply to you unless you're either a qualified lawyer or working for a firm that's regulated by the SRA. Although, if you're working at a law clinic that's either supervised by a solicitor or organised through a law firm, these rules could apply. But in any event, I think it's still a good idea to act in accordance with the code whenever you're giving legal advice, because it does set out a good standard for behaviour and for conduct, and it will be good practice for when you're fully qualified. Now, I won't go into the whole code of conduct here, but I will set out a few key provisions that you might want to bear in mind. Firstly, you'll find a section on maintaining trust and acting fairly, and this covers things like not abusing your position as a lawyer and not misleading clients. There are sections on service and competence, and this covers things like ensuring the service you provide is competent and delivered in a timely manner. There's a section on conflicts of interest. Now, I could probably fill up this whole session talking about what conflicts of interest are, but in a nutshell, when you're advising a client, you have a duty to act in their best interests. And this rule prevents you from advising on other matters that could be detrimental to your client. A good example of this would be if you're advising a wife on divorce proceedings and the next day the husband arrives also seeking advice on that divorce. It's unlikely that you'd be able to achieve the best outcome for both of these clients by advising them both. So this would be a conflict of interest, and under the code, you would only be able to act for one of those two clients. Another important section it's worth calling out is the section on confidentiality. So any dealings that you have with clients are normally covered by strict rules of confidentiality. These prevent you from discussing the matter with anyone other than your supervisors or colleagues. You should never discuss details of clients' matters with families or friends, even if you didn't mention the client by name, as confidentiality is one of the founding rules under the Code of Conduct, and you may find that breaking this rule or any of the other rules in the code could have an impact on your ability to become a lawyer in the future. And as I mentioned, I think it's a good idea to start familiarising yourself with the code now, and remember to exercise judgment when applying these standards to the situation you're in, bearing in mind your role and responsibilities, area of practice, and the type of clients that you're dealing with. So I'm now going to move on to the Pro Bono Protocol for legal work. So the Pro Bono Protocol is a set of rules that you'll most likely be required to follow when undertaking advice at a law clinic. The protocol was developed a few years back to sit alongside other bodies of rules like the Code of Conduct to help maintain a high standard across all pro bono work. And it's very much endorsed by the core legal regulators, including the Law Society and the Bar Council. Before we get into this in a bit more detail, I'll quickly cover off what pro bono legal work is. So pro bono essentially covers free legal advice, normally given where there is a public interest, to individuals, charities or community groups who can't afford to pay for it. It's highly likely that the clinic work that many of you will be involved in through your university or law school will be undertaken on a pro bono basis, which means you'll be fulfilling an integral part of the legal system by providing access to justice and meeting unmet legal needs. And when you do undertake pro bono work, the protocol sets out some core duties you'll need to comply with, and these include things like the requirement to undertake work to a high standard, ensuring work is undertaken by someone who's adequately trained with appropriate knowledge, skills and experience, not working without appropriate insurance. So this insurance is intended to cover any loss that could arise if there are any issues with the advice that's being given. There's a duty to advise clients around the risks and cost implications of taking a particular course of action. And there are also specific provisions for law students, such as yourselves, that are worth bearing in mind that will require you to ensure that you're properly supervised when you undertake any of the pro bono work. And I think, as with the Code of Conduct, it's a really good idea to start familiarising yourself with this protocol now, as this will hold you in good stead for the future. And it's also important to flag that when you're providing pro bono advice, just because that advice is free, it doesn't mean that the same high standards don't apply. So you should approach this in the same way that you would if you were a qualified practicing solicitor. So now I'm going to end this talk with a few words on the subject of ethics. So ethical choices underpin the millions of decisions that are made by legal professionals every day. And whilst ethics can be very personal and can change from person to person, legal professionals are expected to operate to a high level of conduct and can expect to be held to account if these high levels are not met. The legal profession depends on trust, so if you don't act in an ethical way and with integrity, it can seriously harm public confidence in the whole legal system. So acting with ethics and integrity means more than just not being dishonest. It means following the ethical standards of the profession, and every aspect of your conduct should reflect this. So it's important that in all of your legal work, you ask yourself, am I acting in a way that would be expected of a legal professional? And am I behaving in a way that will maintain the trust the public places in lawyers? And if you're ever in any doubt, you can always speak to your tutor, supervising solicitor, or even organisations like the Law Society for guidance on this. So that brings me to the end of my talk. I hope this has been a useful run through of some of the points to look out for when providing legal advice, and I wish you all the best in your careers as future lawyers. Thank you.